especially when we all get to that bootcamp stage. Now, talking about the CleanTech competition itself, tonight we're also lucky to be joined by the runner-up of last year's CleanTech Challenge. We have Amritha Appaswami. Amritha trained as a biomedical engineer, and in her pre-MBA career, she worked in research and product development for a biotech startup in California. She's studying her LBS MBA second year, and her time was equally divided between developing cleaner bioprocess solutions for pharmaceutical products, as well as developing microbials platform for the lab scale and pilot scale production of advanced biofuels and alternative energy. She has continued to maintain an interest in new technologies in the CleanTech energy sector, and in her word, 2012 CleanTech Challenge was a great forum to work with a group of scientists from UCL. Most recently, she spent her summer working with Cargill, a US-based firm providing food, agriculture, energy, transportation, industrial solutions across the world. Now, tonight she will stand up here and provide everybody with a bit of insight, direct from her experience in participating in CleanTech Challenge, and some of the key success factors and some of the lessons. So please welcome Amritha.
Thanks to the CTC committee for having me here tonight. It's going to be a tough act to follow some really good speakers tonight. Again, I don't have any slides either, but as Ashwin mentioned, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to share some of the key takeaways from my team and I from participating in the challenge last year. Maybe offer some advice for teams looking to participate in it this year. And I must admit, a small part of my talk is going to be focused on microbes, or enabling technology for microbes. So I'm going to begin by talking about some of the key takeaways. And by far, the biggest benefit that at least personally I derived was the opportunity for us here in the MBA community to meet people that are working in the cutting edge of technologies, scientists from UCL. So that for us was very good, to meet people that are developing these technologies and having questions on, will this ever be a viable business idea? Can it ever be taken to market? Combining that with the students here that have the skills to assess business opportunities and help them actually take it to market. So that was a huge benefit. The second one was the exposure the challenge itself gave us, not only to practitioners in clean technologies, renewable energy, oil and gas industry, but also to the investing community, to angel investors, to venture capitalists, and to understand how they look at businesses and how they look at investment opportunities, and to sort of get a little bit into their heads when looking at our own ideas. So that was a tremendous exposure, and of course the networking opportunity with all of the teams from around the world. So to understand what other new technologies are being developed, how they're crafting their business models, what kinds of financing they seek to go after, how they're structuring and pricing. Depending on how advanced those business plans are, these are things we benefited from as well. So before I go into some of the mechanics of the challenge and what we learned from it, I want to briefly talk about what our business idea was. As I mentioned, it was in the biotech space. So our technology was developed by one of the scientists in the University College of London. I took the liberty of inviting him here tonight, Chris Brandt. Our team was comprised of 3 scientists from UCL, as well as 2 MBA students from London Business School, myself and an executive MBA student. And I think for us, the challenge was a fortuitous way for people with an interest in entrepreneurship and in financing and in business development to come together. Myself, I have a background in biochemical engineering. I'm starting to get interested in the business side of it. It was great to see scientists developing these technologies in that space. My fellow MBA student had a background in raising capital and finance in the oil and gas industry. The scientists that we worked with had themselves either developed their own startups or were very close to doing so. one of our team members had actually been on the committee of the CleanTech Challenge in the previous year. So again, to Hannah's point, I cannot emphasize enough the attention you need to pay to team composition. I think for us, that was something that definitely worked well, in that we had people that understood the science and the business and could talk to one another and understand how we need to communicate to the audience. So the technology that was developed by Chris during the course of his research. So to give you a little bit of a background, the biotech industry traditionally has, I'm going to describe it in a very crude way, has used microbes to convert starting material into an industrial product of interest. Typically, these reactions take place in these huge tanks, a lot of liquid floating around that supplies nutrients, provide the right conditions to these organisms to convert what you feed into a desired product. But about 70% of the costs associated with these processes come from the purification steps associated either with supplying those materials or in extracting your product of interest in the end. The technology that was developed, if you will, you can think of it as sort of a plug-in pump into the membranes of these cells that allow you to selectively secrete compounds of interest. So what this means in economic terms is by using this enabling technology, you dramatically cut down the number of steps you need to get to that product of interest. So you reduce also in terms of energy, the number of unit operations, and cost. And of course your efficiency goes up because now you can selectively extract your product. So productivity yields improve dramatically. I believe in his research he's been able to show in proof of concept studies up to 160-fold increase in productivity. In terms of the market potential for this technology, measured in terms of applications that bio-based processes are used in, it ranges from detergent alcohols, fine and specialty chemicals, biofuels, and pharmaceutical products. And as of 2010, that size was about $3 trillion. And as of 2010, bio-based technologies only accounted for about 10 to 20% of the manufacturing processes used to synthesize these compounds. That is estimated to double in the next 10 to 12 years. So that's the potential we were looking at. But bringing that back into the fold of what it meant for us in the CleanTech Challenge and communicating this promise to the audience was, as she mentioned, to very succinctly convey the novelty of the technology as well as the business potential. So the one thing that I would urge teams to think about right from the very beginning is in terms of what that pitch is going to be, what that, how that concept is going to be described to the layman. And that was something that at times we fumbled with and we could have done much better with. So communication, I would say, would be very, very important. The other aspect of the CleanTech Challenge that we as a team found enormously beneficial was the mentorship that we received. And the committee puts a lot of effort into assigning 2 to 3 different mentors to you that are very well suited to understanding your particular technology or in understanding what financing needs it may encounter. And for us, it was very useful in going through the rounds, going into the boot camp. Initially, we started off thinking of this as, oh, we'll approach customers in these different product areas and talk about licensing agreements. But I think what the mentorship really helped us understand was in structuring this as a business plan with a concrete understanding of the payback time, with a concrete understanding of what kind of financing structure we would use, and an understanding of what exit options we would have. So really thinking about it in terms of a business strategy and not just merely in terms of an enabling technology. So that is another thing that I would advise you to start thinking about from the beginning, and to think of your team formation as well in plugging those gaps in how you approach the competition. The third piece of advice that I wanted to give is regarding the final round itself, which is the boot camp, and I hope many of you in this room will make it into that stage. And that is about how you harness the knowledge and the wisdom of your mentors. The final boot camp takes place over 2 days. You're presented with a question on the first day, a challenge question. You work on it for 24 hours, and then you deliver a presentation on the second day. And it's a very intense process. All the teams go off into their respective rooms and they're holed in. Some work all night almost to come up with this plan. And I think somewhere along the way, you can forget get to use the insights of your mentors in a very targeted way. The way we went about it was to present our storyline to each of our mentors and to get more of a high-level insight to understand if our story was coming across in a clear way. While this was extremely beneficial in itself, we found that going from one mentor to the other, we ended up crafting our storyline multiple times and retelling it in different ways in taste with each of how the mentors viewed it. What might have been in hindsight more useful for us was to come up with a storyline, then to identify areas which we were finding difficult to overcome in terms of the question we were trying to answer, and to use their insight specifically, in those aspects, so that you're not wasting a lot of time retelling the story. So those would be my key insights. And finally, I'd like to wrap up by saying that the challenge is not the end of the road. Like I mentioned, the exposure that you're going to get to people that are working in the CleanTech space, the investment community, is going to be tremendous. So remember to stay in touch with this community, and also remember to make use of all the resources that you have here at LBS for entrepreneurship. So there are a number of courses in the elective portfolio. I wish I'd taken some of them last year, so I could have been more informed going into the challenge. But bear in mind that it's never too late to learn. And I know from Chris, speaking with him just last night, even though we didn't get the 10K prize, that would have been awesome, he was able to secure other grants after that just because of the exposure that we direct through the challenge. So good luck to